All right. Hello, internet people. No one's here yet, but somebody might watch this in like 7 months and be like, who are these
Handsome
doofuses?
fucks.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to use.
Mm-hmm.
So, to get started with everyone's adventure in this thing, this is Subscriber Appreciation Day for May of 2018, because we're already at the end of May. Yeah, so what this is that on the last Sunday of the months, and it's Saturday today because of a whole weird thing that I thought I was going to have to do, but turned out I didn't. So today is an exception, but it's a show in which I grab cool people from the internet, bring them in here, and let the audience ask them things. And we've had all sorts of prestigious, wonderful guests, and today is no exception.
I was going to say you ran out, and so today we're slumming it a little.
Oh no, he's a rising star in the video essay community, the Adobe Illustrator based community.
Illustrator heads. I actually used Premiere, not Illustrator.
To do the drawings?
Yeah. Well, no, I make the drawings in Clip Studio.
Clip Studio. There's first. All right, I already see that Ron is here.
Ron! I'm not going to say his full name.
And let's see. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then people talking in Spanish and stuff. So yeah, everybody is ready. Caleb is here, and Sir Zhao Zhao, he's a regular. Anyways, I have dawdled long enough. So this is the monthly show where we talk about stuff. And my guest today is none other than Mr. Slime.
I'm that
First
one.
name Thought. Introduce yourself and the kind of stuff you do.
Hello, I'm Thought Slime. I make YouTube videos that are little boner cartoons with... Oh, can I swear?
Yes.
Okay, I make little boner cartoons that are about left-wing politics and intersectional social justice and other things that people get very mad at me about. And I love each and every one of you, like my own sons and daughters.
Awesome. So we'll chat about the kind of work you're doing, the kind of stuff that's up to, and if anybody has anything they want to have us go down.
I don't know if I call it work.
But yeah, if anybody wants to ask us something to talk about, then we'll go in that direction. So I guess I could start with the kind of typical interview questions. Like, why did you start drawing boner cartoons?
Well, I just sorry, my dentist is calling me. Like most people, I'm in love with the sound of my own voice, and I really didn't want to show my face on camera at first, which is a fear I just slowly got over. So I started off just drawing little cartoons because I figured that was the most engaging way. Like I can sort of cartoon a little, so I thought that would be like better than just talking over nothing.
Yeah.
And I
approach.
Yeah. It kind of went from there.
Mm-hmm. And you got a bunch of attention. You got on my radar because of, like, I think your first video ended up making the rounds pretty quickly.
Yeah, Kevin Logan mirrored it.
It's a good way to start. Yeah. About why PC culture is kind of awesome.
Yeah. Which now has, I'm proud to say, more dislikes than likes.
That's always good.
That's great to see. I take a perverse pleasure in that.
Yeah, we were talking about this last weekend, and I think we've talked about it several times, that you touch a nerve with people, specifically the goofballs of the internet.
Yeah, I kind of saw that coming because I do have I have a way of antagonizing them where it's not clear that I'm trying to make them mad. Like I'm just amusing myself and they're the butt of the joke. And they really don't like that because they're used to it being the other way around. They're used to being the people with the power in the situation who can make fun of other people. And they absolutely can't stand having that lens turned around on them.
Mm-hmm.
I find that very interesting.
And so, as you said, like lots of your videos, you especially, what's your favorite group of detractors?
Got to be the ANCAPs. Got to be.
People. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, because my second video was about, wasn't even really like taking down ANCAPs. It was just describing why I don't think they should be called that. And it made them so mad, and they follow me to this day. Like every single video I put out, they make response videos, and they like invade my Discord server to like yell racial slurs at me, and they can't let it go, and it's so bittersweet to me.
It's beautiful. I could only hope to have a kind of the enthusiasm of detractors that you've garnered. I'm trying to think, like ANCAPs, they're the people who see all the problems of the world and decide that the most important problems in the world are that they can't marry children, have slavery come back, drink raw milk, or run the economy on bitcoins.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Yeah, basically. Basically, they think that if left to their own devices, corporations would do only what is beneficial for people. And the only thing that prevents them from doing so is regulation that is misguidedly an attempt to force them to do what is right for people. But of course, the free market can only do what is right for people because if it didn't, then nobody would buy those products, which, I mean, fucking Chick-fil-A came out against gay marriage, and then there were lines around the block to get Chick-fil-A. I don't think that's true. Like, I think that corporations can very much do evil things, and if they're still convenient to buy from, people still will.
Yeah. It's true. It's kind of like, it's a faith-based initiative. There's this, I mean, it's funny because they seem strange, and even to like the average person, they seem strange, but they're kind of the logical end result of a lot of the way that the world functions.
You're right. It's just like a lack of nuance is what they have. They've seen like the way that people talk about markets, and they've applied that so broadly to the point of absurdity. Like it's so black and white to them. Yeah.
All right, the questions are starting to come in, so we have a little bit of this improv show can take off a little bit. Let me just got 3 real quick. So one is someone. This one kind of requires we know about somebody. I don't know this person. Maybe you do. Anubis 2814.
I'm not familiar.
All right. Sorry, Zhao Zhao. All right. Seamus McNed said they've been watching videos for over a year and subscribed last week. Very good job. I agree with what you did. All right. What are some big skeptics that are ANCAPs? Ooh.
There's Mr. Dapperton is probably the biggest one.
Is that the one where it's like a guy with a paintball mask and a suit and half the mask is yellow?
Yeah, he's trying to look like Deathstroke from DC Comics. He's got the top hat, and he draws. I saw this. Someone did like a fan cartoon of him where he's like beating up like communists and stuff.
Oh God!
With his like swords and doing all these cool martial arts. And it's like, is that who you think you are? Like,
oh man, it's like there's that one political cartoonist, that like alt-right political cartoonist who draws Trump as like this muscular, square-jawed, like
Ben Garrison.
Ben Garrison, that's it.
Yeah,
it's just like, who do you think this is?
Did you see that Ben Garrison released a mug that is Trump, the bottom half of Trump's mouth, and the idea of the mug is that every time you drink from it, you're kissing Trump?
Oh my goodness. It's like, that's some reverence right there.
He's got a little crush.
It's kind of cute in a way.
Yeah, it's a little bit cute in a sickening kind of way.
The other one too, there's another guy who's also a real extremely normal person. The guy who paints these like really over the top detailed paintings that like he painted the one of like Obama stepping on the Constitution and all the founding fathers getting angry.
Yeah.
And,
Or he recently did the one with Trump teaching the kid to fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like these like saccharine like thing you'd see on your like grandma's wall type paintings.
They're like Norman Rockwell paintings from like a evil dark universe.
It's true. And it has been photoshopped a bajillion times, including the wonderful gif of Obama dancing on the Constitution.
Yeah, I love that. And also I love the ones where they make it like Lovecraft themed.
That kind of fits the whole Norman Rockwell from an alternate universe type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There's some good stuff coming down. So I'd like to ask, what is the best way to go about a socialist community organizing in a heavily pro-capitalist location? Ooh, that's a mouthful of an answer there.
Yeah. I'll let you know if I figure it out. I think well, my answer is going to be very heavily biased towards a certain tendency. But in my view, the best thing you can do is get people together, get people talking, community organizing like food banks or anti-fascist demonstrating or guerrilla protests and things like that. There's those free stores that people do where people just bring things they don't need anymore and people can just come and take what they need.
Yep.
Those are a great example of a thing you can do. I think, yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, Tristan? Sorry.
I have several that are like, I'm not exactly sure which ones would get me in trouble for saying on the internet in public, but a few things. One is I think that if one of the most toxic things to capitalism is having people actually talk to each other. And we're in a world that doesn't do that much anymore. So getting, like, as I said, community, not just like for our political agitation, but just get people meeting each other in places more often and not just going straight from work to home to sleep and then do it again.
Or while you're at work too. That's a great place to agitate.
That's true.
You should talk about your wages with your coworkers. I think that's some horse shit that we've been conditioned that it's rude to talk about how much we make so that they can get away with paying people unfairly. If everybody talks about what they make, then they can't really do that.
Yeah, it's true. They did a big thing on with Google with that, right? And like it made a lot of people angry and led to a lot of changes. But yeah, that's a good one to do. The other thing too, and you talked about free stores, which are a great idea, which is that if you have something that you don't need that's not broken, try to find somebody who wants it. And if something is broken, fix it or find a way to fix it if you can. Those are like anti-consumer good things that I think everyone should do. Third one is steal things. Steal lots of things. It's like don't.
This is satire, by the way. This is all satire. In case any cops are watching, what we're doing.
Any cops are watching. Just kidding. Now, I don't mean like anything where the risk of you getting in trouble is anywhere. Like,
please don't go to jail because two doofuses on the internet told you to steal from Walmart. Like,
yeah, precisely.
Use your brain.
Don't shoplift. That's like not a great thing because the calculus is not in your favor there. But like, don't buy cable. Come on.
Yeah, you can literally get like an antenna that you can hook up to your window and get all satellite channels for free.
So if you can get anything that doesn't involve paying for it, and if you can give something of yours away to somebody that doesn't involve paying for it, you are actually doing a service.
And another thing too, there's local orgs you can join, like the DSA or the IWW. They do a lot of community organizing that you can get involved with. I'm actually going, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is here, Tristan, because I'm going to a meeting of the IWW tomorrow, the General Defense Committee. So I'm checking that out.
That's fun.
Yeah.
It'll probably be free vegan treats.
I didn't even think of that.
You never know. So like the real winning thing is like the IWW's old line of making a new world in the shell of the old type thing. And this is why I'm not much of a revolution person, because I think that that I've studied enough revolutions to know that they never really go the way that you want them to. But kind of doing every little bit to make the old way relevant is kind of my go-to. That's my jam.
See, my view on revolution is that, like, getting an army together and overthrowing the government, that's not going to work. But the revolution should be like a social process where people, like, learn to undo these dangerous and toxic habits that we've all kind of accumulated, and it, you know, like, I don't really see any other way to get what we want.
Yeah, I think that the days of, at least any days where it is a group of disenfranchised people walking into parliament and kidnapping all the politicians and saying the government is like this now, is pretty much over. You know, people who are going to be doing that are going to be like military dictators and things like that. I don't see 1917 happening again. We have too many drones.
Yeah, too many drones, and Amazon's got all of our faces and their deep mine bullshit.
It's really a longer term process that, honestly, killing people will just set you back on. Because then you lose your PR fight and everything. Because that's how the world works now. No?
Well, I don't want to say, I don't want to be the guy on the stream advocating killing people.
Okay,
that's not my position, but I have views on the PR aspect of it. I did a video on that about the optics of Antifa and the way that once something happens, we tend to just let the right control the narrative. I have very strong feelings about that. Where it's like, if someone in Antifa does something violent, then instead of like that, like, everyone rushes to go, oh, this isn't how we do things. We can't do things like this. And it's like, instead of doing that, you could be like, oh, that's a bad tactic, but he did it for this reason, and that's what we should focus on.
For sure. Yeah, I'm not going to call anybody out. I ain't no snitch.
No.
Next question. Okay, speaking of political cartoons, have you seen, I'm quoting verbatim, Jordan B. Peepe's panels?
No.
I'm not exactly sure what Jenga Tree 121 is referring to with this, but I hope that there's some sort of parody Jordan Peterson comic that's happening. That's what I hope that is.
Or Jordan Peterson made his own political cartoons starring Pepe the Frog.
That sounds like something he'd do.
Maybe if Pepe was a lobster.
Pepe was a... Oh, man. What? Just why? I don't know. I can't start with him. He's my kryptonite.
Yeah.
Ripping on him is like my guilty pleasure.
It's alarming to me that he's still around.
I do like that it seems that he's starting to crack. And the things, like, as people pay more attention to him, the things that he says when he thinks that, like, in the past when people only paid attention to him when he was being interviewed, are starting to come out, and all of a sudden he starts saying terrible things and the world starts finding out about it.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how to walk anything back. He seems to be, like, very incapable of walking things back.
He's got one trick, is he just goes, no, you're misinterpreting me, or you're doing this deliberately. And that worked for a long time, but it seems like people are finally getting wise to it a little bit.
Yeah. I was thinking of doing a video at some point about, I did a long rant at a friend of mine a couple days ago about the free speech argument and the free, and why I think that Canada's hate speech laws are actually really good. And it all started when I was doing research for my What is a Neo-Nazi video. And I realized that because of the hate speech laws, we actually have a very small amount of Nazi organization in Canada compared to other countries in the same bubble. And they have a harder time organizing and being in public.
Let me ask you this, though. they recently in Hamilton, after the riot that happened at an anarchist book fair, and when I say riot, I mean like a few guys flipped some garbage cans and broke some windows.
Not windows.
They declared the anarchist A hate symbol and used that to shut down anarchist public organizing.
That couldn't stand up in court. They have no way that they could demonstrate that is a hate symbol. They might try. Like, that's the thing, is like, it'd be so hard to defend that, you know? Because they, like, when you talk about, now you could probably say that you've made maybe the argument that it's a seditious symbol, because
but that's not against the law.
No, but to say that it's a hate symbol, you have to they wouldn't be able to make a case, I think, anyways. But that's just me. And you don't need to have a law be defendable in court for it to have an impact. But I think that if anyone fought that, it would not stand.
Yes, and hopefully someone will, but who knows?
But I do think that blocking the publication of racist literature and banning hate groups from demonstrating in public has resulted in it being harder for the radical right to organize in Canada.
Oh, hell yeah. And it keeps a lot of them from like visiting and doing their little hate rallies. Like the Westboro Baptist Church couldn't come to Canada and do their hateful garbage.
It's true. And I think that is a good thing. But everybody, I literally don't know anybody that I've met who didn't dunk on the hate speech law, because everybody sees it like it's like everybody thinks that they're the founding fathers or something. That the
freedom experts, the founding fathers.
Yes,
we've been total human freedom except for women or anyone who wasn't white.
Yeah, and so like it's just interesting because freedom of speech seems extremely important when defending people who are basically doing the political version of yelling fire in a crowded theater.
Well, the question I would always pose to the people who take that absolute, we must allow all hateful speech to have a public audience is, would you allow ISIS to hold a big rally and spread their views in the middle of public? Like, would you allow that? And they'll never argue in favor of that. And I think that the far right is comparable to ISIS in terms of what they want to accomplish.
Yep.
They're less likely to accomplish it, but they're equally morally reprehensible, in my view.
Yeah, and they'll agitate when like Faith Goldie, Faith Goldie is just the Nazi. What's the name of she was like a Queen student or something that got fired for playing Jordan Peterson videos in tutorial.
I can't. I think it was Nicole something.
It's not important what her name is. The less you know about her, the better. But the thing about, they'll come to that defense. But like when, for example, like trans students are shut down or their ability to speak is threatened, I don't see the free speech warriors coming out of their.
Or if the NFL says that you can't kneel during the anthem, or that professor who got fired for saying the police were bad. It is this like free speech for me, not for the type of attitude.
Mm-hmm. I think actually there's a really good the free speech video done by her name. Wow, ContraPoints. You can tell my brain is really in full gear today. Her video about free speech shows that there's really no such thing as absolute free speech, that you are always denying one side of a speech by enabling another, and that is sort of, there's always a decision to make.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm. I have this friend, and this is the person I was talking to on Thursday, and he is a nice person, but he's like this moderate right-wing person, and it's just always so weird to have conversations with him. And these kinds of things come up.
They have such a firm grasp on the message, though. It's so hard to get people to even drift towards the center, you know?
Yeah. Well, this guy's like, I think this guy might be the last moderate right-wing person on the planet. Like he's the last, like he's like this right-wing person who also doesn't hate trans people and also isn't crazy. He doesn't like he doesn't even like nationalism. He thinks nationalism is bad. He thinks that he likes Canada because it's not nationalist, which is I think is a bit of a crock. But
Oh, yeah, it's kind of self-defeating.
yeah, because I said that like because I was saying that the hate speech law, right? There's one province where the hate speech law doesn't apply because they're non-signatories to the Canadian Constitution, and that's Quebec. Quebec has the highest concentration of neo-Nazi groups and far-right groups in the country. And I was like, well, maybe this is a reason why. But he's like, oh, it's because they're ethno-nationalists, and they have this ethno-national, like nationalism causes this kind of thing, not like hate speech laws. I was like, I don't know.
Well, I think nationalism is definitely a big part of it, but I would think that like that type of ethno-nationalism can only really like emerge if hate speech is allowed.
Yeah,
you know,
like I speak as someone who lived in Quebec for many years. They are of a strange bunch, but yeah, there's Quebecois ethno-nationalism is definitely ripe for being abused in this fashion. It's still a thing that lurks under the surface, and yeah, and then I'm not like defending nationalism. I think nationalism is terrible. For a reference as to how much I hate nationalism, watch almost any video I've made on my channel. But yeah,
I don't think anyone was taking.
Oh no! Oh, sorry, you paused for a second. I missed that sentence.
I said I don't think anybody was going to expected you to launch into a diatribe about the power of the Vogue. Like, you're pretty clearly anti-nationalist.
Mm-hmm. Which sometimes gets me accused of being a liberal because I like deny. I even have some issues. I don't know. This is like real noodly stuff, but I get really. I even have some umbrage to take with like third world nationalism movements. Because like there's a lot of people, especially like I believe there's like a philosophy tube video that recently kind of had some praise for it, and I was like, you know, the like third world nationalism sounds nice when it's an anti-colonial movement, but it also results in things like, you know, where the Ugandan president ordered all of the Indian people to leave, and so all the people who had been brought over by the British to India were forced to just leave. The 70s.
Yeah, you know, I struggle because I agree, and I would prefer that these are just anti-colonialist movements. But I also like feel in a weird place where like I can't really criticize because in almost any situation, I am the colonizer.
That's true.
You know, so it's like it's kind of rich for me to tell you, no, here's how you can protest colonization.
Must be vigilant about perspective. I agree.
Yeah, there's all these middle grounds. Yeah.
All right. Next question we got here is, how ironic is it to have an Affordable Care Act that you can't afford? Oh man, I do feel. All right. So cards on the table. I'm married to an American immigrant. She applied for permanent residency status in late 2016, so I almost say American refugee, but it came up the other day, where for some reason they decided to show me like on Facebook they have all these algorithmic crazy things say like this is like something you posted this time last year and things like that, and what came up was, oh, this day happens to be the time in 2017 where you posted your most responded to and liked picture of the year. And it was her getting her health card, which was like a huge deal. I feel so pampered.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine not having healthcare. That to me is so bizarre. Like,
Yeah, if I'm in the U.S., I'm just always like, don't get sick, don't fall down. I'm gonna get all my. I'll take that steak, well done, thanks.
Yeah, like to me, like it just, how are people not revolting in the streets? Here's the situation I'm in right now. I have to get what's called a myo brace from the dentist, which is this little piece of injection molded plastic that's supposed to be like a mouth guard that I wear when I go to sleep. And that's going to cost me $3,000. And the injustice of that, which, that's not life threatening. That isn't something that I'm going to die if I don't get, but I still need it. And the injustice of that is so like raw to me. The fact that it is literally like, if you let me operate the machine, I could make this thing for 30 cents,
I just got a great line. Great line came here from the. You are totally banned from this channel.
What would I do?
No, this is a person who literally calls themselves the fascist anarchist and put in a bunch of stupid comments. So I decided to finally ban them. But a great comment came here where it's like, right now I'm unemployed and get free Medicare, but once I get a job, hopefully soon, and start making money, so I won't be able to afford healthcare again. But yeah, like in Ontario, our like briefest touch with how private healthcare works is the fact that we have private dentistry still. And yeah, it's like the most terrible thing. It's like it's the raw injustice of it is for something that's like for toothaches and stuff like that. And, I mean, sometimes it can be some very serious work, but
another example is I had a wisdom tooth come in, and I didn't have a job, so it just festered in my mouth and got infected, and I could have died. So I kind of, I don't want to say like I understand the feeling that it would have to like not be able to afford medical treatment, but I have some experience with that feeling, and I don't understand how people can advocate for that system and sleep at night. It is so ghoulish to me. It is such a naked demonstration of human avarice. Like how does Paul Ryan? How has he not been visited by 3 ghosts?
Oh boy, I like that. I agree. Like I bet he sleeps like a goddamn baby too, because he's the one who is because he gets healthcare through the Congress, and then he gets to like retire at like he's like 47 or something, and he's going to make a government stipend for the rest of his life and also have free healthcare through his congressional thing for the rest of his life, and he's like in his late 40s. There's some stuff about Paul Ryan. I've heard things like about how he had like all of his like free market ideology is all him like working out issues with his dad and weird stuff like that. I don't know.
I would think when I think of free market people, I think it's people who really want to impress their dads. The stereotype of left-wingers is that they're all mad at their dads. So inversely, I would think that right-wingers are people who really like their dads.
I think I think he grew. I think that there's like, or there a lot of like vanilla conservative line was also the epitome of just got mine.
It's just he wakes up every day and he says, "I'm going to make the world a little bit harder for poor people." I'm like, that's my goal. That's what I want to do when I wake up today. I don't know how anyone can live like that. Like, do you think that he believes in the righteousness of what he does? Or do you think he's just like a shill who knows that he's going to like benefit from it?
Well, ANCAPs. And he's like a milder ANCAP. You know that like they have like there's a philosophy behind it that they probably just dive into and like surround themselves with. It's like that faith in the free market thing that like if this is how the market's doing it, so therefore it has to be right.
I feel though like with ANCAPs, most of the ANCAPs I know or that I'm aware of. I don't know any personally. They don't tend to be like wealthy people.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to be people with not a lot going on for them, and it's something that, like a cult, is like an easy answer for why their lives are kind of not how they want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it is always striking to me when someone like Paul Ryan or the Koch brothers seem to be true believers in this, because it's like, come on, like you must know what you're doing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. The Koch brothers are spending way too much of their own money to be doing it just for like gain. Like they must be true believers, and that I just don't know. I don't. My brain can't go to Ayn Rand world.
Did you know that? Did you know that the Koch brothers now call themselves classical liberals?
Oh my. Well, I mean, I guess the term conservative is getting tarnished, so this is their new thing.
And libertarian, which they previously called themselves.
Yeah, which they stole.
Yeah. Well, I mean, classical liberal is definitely an attempt to like rebrand themselves as not horrible racist homophobes.
Well, like yeah, well, it also comes from like because classical liberal comes from the Victorian Age.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned this in a video once where I was just like, this is all canard because neoliberalism, the word neoliberalism, actually means neoclassical liberalism. It is the
Yeah.
return of classical liberalism from the Victorian Age in modern day. And so calling yourself a classical liberal is either saying you're a neoliberal who decided to go for a brand change, which I don't know if that rings true because like neoliberals have they're very conscious of brand awareness. Or it's a desire of like actual classical liberalism, like paleo liberalism or something like that. Like they literally want the Victorian Age back. They literally want like debate skull shapes of the Irish menace or something like that.
Someone linked me on Twitter, literally that, like a guy measuring the skulls of some ethnicity of people in Ethiopia that he said were the tallest and darkest, and he had 1 million subscribers.
Oh, jeez.
But here's the good news: they then linked that person's Patreon, and they made like $100 a month.
Oh boy,
with 1 million subscribers.
In so many ways, I don't know if that this is like. There's a lot of people who are trying to say that like we're in this moment that feels like the calm before the rush of the Second World War, which is interesting. But I
don't feel calm. Do you feel calm? I don't feel calm.
Or like, yeah, okay, yeah. Like
I feel very anxious, actually.
I mean, calm compared to what's coming. But in some ways, I feel like everything feels a lot more Victorian than it used to be. So like the Victorian Age, which is, for everybody out there, is basically the fall of Napoleon, the kind of world after Napoleon collapsed, up until the end of the First World War. The First World War was kind of like the climactic ending of the Victorian Age. But it's increasingly a world where nationalism is becoming a thing, socialism is becoming a thing, and then all of the classical liberals who are at the head of these like empires are struggling to hold things together. And in doing so, what they're doing to deal with constant crises of capitalism is relying on colonization. And like that's why like in the 19th century you had like mad expansions into like Africa, into like places where like this is the time when they started colonizing parts of Africa where like large percentages of their troops could not get in before because they were just flat out dying of malaria. So they're like that desperate to push into like some of the most remote regions of the world in order to just rob people of all of their natural resources and kill like massive percentages of their population. And it's just like that. I mean, yeah, the ruling class is like this kind of imperial world order that's really messing with not only like colonizing the world, but colonizing themselves. And then you have these radical new ideologies popping up, or radical old ideologies coming back that are propping up out of the ground. Now, unfortunately, that ended with the literal war that had the nickname "the war to end all wars."
Good news, though, it didn't. There were several more.
Yeah.
That
All right.
you can't outclass me by saying a bunch of smart shit like that. This whole stream, like we get it. You got a big history dick. Like, okay.
It's I gotta stop nerding out. Okay.
Then I'm gonna be like fart ghoulies. Like, yeah.
Fart ghoulies.
You know, yeah.
It's just that I don't know. It's interesting. Because the Victorian Age was a weird time.
I always think, and I'm not a big Lenin fan, but that quote by Lenin where he says there are decades where years happen and years where decades happen, or something to that effect.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
It does feel like we're going into years where decades happen.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, I just got someone just said, can you move on to the next question? I don't have all day.
All right.
All right, fair enough. The next question. All right. Do you, and by you referring to me, you pushed you referring to me. That is incorrect. The correct answer is you. Do you think that it is better to risk driving away non-leftists from your channel to promote your political views? We both have very different channel strategies, so I'd be curious to know. We could probably go one or the other, but you should start. You were the guest.
Well, the way I look at it is the number one thing I could do to be self-defeating is to mince words. I believe in being completely honest and transparent about what it is I believe and what it is I'm trying to get you to believe, because the last thing I want to do is make people feel like I'm tricking them or trying to indoctrinate them subliminally. I want them to know, like, going in, like, here's the point of view I hold. Here's why I want you to hold it too. In terms of whether or not that's a winning strategy, I don't know. I think it's the right thing to do. And I think that's what the right does. And I think that's why they have such a stranglehold on old media, because they can just tell you, like, this is what we believe and this is what we're saying. And people on the left have always been very shy since probably like McCarthyism. I mean, there's good reasons why people on the left are very shy about their opinions. It's not something that is talked about in polite company.
Well, the right's done a very good job, especially in the Cold War context, to like make it so that if you're too left wing, it can like have actual material, like bad consequences on your life.
But if your life is already garbage, then why not? You know?
Yep.
What do you got to lose?
And we're millennials. All of our lives are garbage. In my case, I would say that one of the things, so like when I started Step Back, one of the reasons I started it is because there's this huge change that happens when you go from high school history to university history, where all throughout like high school, you're taught this history of like, oh, Canada's great, Canada's amazing, aren't countries wonderful, patriotism, voting, yay. Then you go, and then like those kind of people self-select into history programs. Then you go to history class, your first level course. And as somebody who has taught university students for 4 years, you basically then have to tell them that literally everything that they were taught in the high school curriculum has to be like 180'd. Like, for example, actually the curriculum, this is the Quebec history curriculum, and I think in Ontario it's pretty similar. The stated goal of like the curriculum for this year is for history. The stated purpose of history in the curriculum says that it's to create patriotic citizens and good consumers. Yeah, your face says everything. You're not talking, so I can't like it won't show it, but I actually hear it.
Jesus, yeah. that yeah, I can't believe. How do they not know better than to talk in some sort of code? Why are they why are they being that honest?
Yeah. So like in many ways, I think that the way that history is taught, especially the way that our collective consciousness about what the past is very much the right taking control of the narrative. And when I was doing my dissertation work, I was talking about how the narrative, I think this intuitively will make sense to a lot of people. Like when controlling the narrative controls a lot about what the acceptable space of political discourse can be and what the world could look like. So if you have this, if the right or if the radical center have control over what the world looks like and what things are possible and what was a success and what was a failure, then you constrain a lot of conversation. Like, for example, the whole idea of human nature, that there's a lot of arguments against socialism where they'll say, oh, but like human nature. Therefore, humans are naturally selfish and greedy and violent and tribalistic, and history shows that. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not quite true.
And so you have to like go through that. And so a lot of what Step Back was set up to do was to try to look at the things of today with a bit more perspective and try to take what is like more accepted like stuff in the academy and make it public. And I think because of that, a lot of the times my political positions come out, because when you do that kind of revisionist history, it's going to look like you're part of the radical left because reality has a left-wing bias.
Yeah.
But
and,
that's where it is.
And by not appealing what's the term, the bias towards fairness, where like a one approach a lot of people would use to avoid the label of being biased is to present both sides of an argument, even if one side of an argument is completely specious and has no bearing on what you're discussing. And you don't do that. And I think that people might interpret that as you like being biased by presenting the facts neutrally. Is the kind of weird position we're in now, just presenting facts neutrally is a biased act.
Yeah, so like, for example, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, something that is not considered much of a debatable thing. Like the way that the high school curriculum teaches it in the US is that there was estimates that came out that showed that if they invaded, that as many as 1 million people could be killed, at least 100,000 American troops, which would have doubled the almost doubled the death count of American troops in World War II, that it was way too costly and that these bombs saved lives.
That's the way I was taught it in school.
Yeah.
Was that also the idea that this kind of racist idea that the Japanese had no survival instinct and would fight until the last man?
Yeah. I remember hearing that too. When you look at the information, you find that it was a decision that was made, one, sunken cost fallacy. The Manhattan Project was a fuck ton of money to do. Second, preventing a North Japan, South Japan situation, because after the defeat of Germany, the Soviets declared war on Japan and started actually doing stuff. So they wanted to preempt the Soviets entering Japan. And then three, they had like that racist idea of how the Japanese work was something that, you know, people in the 40s believed. So they went for it. The other thing you want to add into there too is that when it comes to their economics, like Japan was about 6 days away from losing its entire petroleum supply. And there's some people who argue that the Emperor of Japan surrendered mostly because of the Soviets entering the war rather than the bombs. And if I were to be perfectly fair and even-handed in a video while talking about that, I would say that the other side is, nuh-uh.
Not those things.
Not those things.
Yeah.
And so,
but because people are so used to that narrative and they've been taught that their entire lives, merely presenting the evidence of as near as you can tell what actually happened appears to them as this leftist smear of Truman.
and I think that there's a lot of and this is why I think that, especially with history, that it hits so that it has that kind of reaction, because like if I were unfortunately, I was trying to make of a science example, but if you were like, no, it's actually not a over b to the power of 6, it's actually like a over b to the power of 5, no one would get mad. But because because I think that the narratives we tell about ourselves is a key part of our identity.
And it's part of the American myth is that they were the heroes of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
If you complicate that, then you're really striking at the heart of American self-identity.
Yeah. And if historians do anything in the academic field, it's try to make every hero into a monster. And that's history. It's just what we do. Here's a history thing that I think you'd find fun. So there was this comic that was found from like the 70s or something. That was like a Kool-Aid man does American history founding fathers thing.
Yeah, with Ben Franklin saying,
"Oh man, I am hot and thirsty," and I was like, "Oh yeah, yes you were, Ben."
Yep, they nailed his characterization. Yeah.
Didn't know. All right. Ron has a question. Speaking of armed resistance, do either of you know about the Tiananmen Square massacre?
I mean, I know the basics.
I know that it happened, but I don't know the details.
I know that they called tanks, and there's that one guy who stood in front of the tanks. And I don't know what happened to him after that.
But I do think that it kind of speaks more to that history thing about like how in China, they do not teach that. Like the average Chinese citizen is not told that the Tiananmen Square like massacre existed. But Ron wanted to know about it in the case of like armed resistance, because these were peaceful protesters who got run over by tanks.
Yeah. No, I think this is somewhere we might disagree. I think there's a difference between both of our sense that an armed takeover is kind of not only futile, but also like even if it worked, it would kind of be self-defeating in a way. But I do think people should still defend themselves from authoritarian violence.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that's, yeah. If it's in like, that has happened here too, like not in Canada, but in the States. Was that a very famous photo of the girl screaming over the kid who got shot?
Oh, the Kent State shooting.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to see like that violence, you know, out in a foreign country with a different system of government. We tend to like overlook the violence that happens in our own backyard a little bit. And so like, yeah, I am definitely not a, you know, an absolutist in the idea of passive resistance.
I think that there's a lot of times where people have mischaracterized what pacifism is and what passive resistance was. Passive resistance is, it's not. It was a thing that comfy college students could do. But when I say I'm a pacifist, it's that I don't see a military option to solving the problems of the world. I guess is the answer.
I would. Kropotkin, famous anarchist philosopher, once said that you can't use the tools of the state to defeat the state. And I think the military is about as much of a tool of the state as there can be. I mean, it is the apparatus that maintains the state. Like, so a military takeover strikes me as kind of like meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah, this is why, like, I think things like the Russian Revolution was like doomed from its inception because of the kinds of things that they did to do it. And so, and revolutions tend to need to garner lots of factions together and push a whole bunch of people with a bunch of different desires to overthrow the ancien regime. And it always results in a period of chaos afterwards, followed by the most authoritarian person you can think of winning out. Maybe I'm saying this because I'm right now animating the longest step back video in Step Back's history about the Iranian Revolution, but this seems to happen over and over and over again. Sometimes their name is Napoleon, sometimes their name is Stalin, sometimes their name is Ayatollah Khomeini, but
George Washington.
Or George Washington. Damn. Mic drop right there.
Cut yourself on that edge, pal.
Yeah. Oh, somebody put a nice comment that I think you might like to hear. So I kind of love this, Tristan, talking to somebody who isn't deep into history. It makes me feel like Thought Slime is a stand-in for me with a dashing beard.
I was a history minor.
You were a history minor?
Yeah.
You were deep in the history mines?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was a history minor until I became a history age of majority.
Nice. I think the way that my university education worked is I took like no non-history courses until like my last year, and I ended up taking like 2 poli-sci courses. So like, I don't know, it was a weird thing. Like I did not get to do the liberal arts education that I wanted.
Yeah. I got all my history courses out of the way first because I was way more interested in them than my major. So,
which was
English.
I had an English course. It was fun because I told them that I had a degree in history and I had no idea what I was doing. And we kind of just rolled with it. And it was children's literature too. It was
the best course I ever took for my major was also a history course because it was literature written by early Canadian settlers. And it was great. It was great. Like that was where I learned about Marguerite de Roberval, who I told you about last time. When
it's on my list. It's on my list of people to do videos about. I checked her out. She's pretty cool.
So no spoilers then.
All right.
That's an upcoming step back. You heard it here first, folks.
I don't know when it's going to happen. It's sometime after July because I've got videos until July already worked out. All right. I feel like we've talked for an hour and the questions are piling up because we keep having too much fun.
We're both blowhards.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying not to say.
Yeah, this is what happened. Well, we've like hung out a couple times. This is what happens too. All right. How do you go about a cultural and linguistic revival without overt nationalism?
A cultural linguistic revival of what?
Of any kind. Like, for an example, one that came was in the 1970s when archaeologists were able to finally figure out the Maya language. They started doing for like in like some charity cases, like they started teaching indigenous Maya people the original language. And like the whole movement to like say in Quebec, how Quebec went through a large period of trying to stem the encroachment of English into their culture with things like the OQLF, the Office Québec de la Langue Française, the like office that enforces French in the province. So like, yeah.
Well, my view on that is transparency and honesty is probably. I think the major thing that makes nationalism dangerous is its tendency to mythologize. If you are like. It's more difficult, for example, to be like a British nationalist if you know the honest history of how the British Empire operated and its effects on the larger world. So, I think that it's the example of a Maya language. Like the Mayans were horribly massacred and oppressed. So I think that in that case, like reclaiming that sense of self-identity to undo the damage of being dehumanized in that way is kind of less dangerous than it would be for a nationalist movement where you're kind of trying to erase those dehumanizations rather than confront and acknowledge them.
Yeah, I think there's a few examples that comes up with too, with like one, like culture to me, like when you talk about linguistic cultural things, these are like art movements in some ways too. Like I think of the Harlem Renaissance, which was hardly a nationalistic movement, but because there's way too many nations come from, but it was an attempt for Black people to rediscover their roots and just build something for themselves that had been stripped away. I do think that linguistic cultural revivals that are attached to like already powerful groups, you have to be just a tad skeptical about what they're doing. Like there's a difference between, say, let's like try to get Irish Gaelic back because it was lost when the English took over Ireland. And like, let's just happen to have like a German American Bund or something. Like let's try to have a German cultural revival for some reason.
Yeah, it really is. It has to be in reaction, I think, to some sort of oppression.
It's true. Yeah, I think that. All right, problem solved. We solved culture.
We solved it. Two white guys figured out how to fix nationalism.
I mean, the fix to nationalism is just don't. Not even once.
Don't even do it.
Nationalism, kids. Don't even.
I learned it from you, Dad. I learned it from you.
All right, language and culture is very. Oh, okay. So Sir Zhao Zhao is a regular, and he's a Swedish person. And the thing is, like, cultural revival and preservation is a really important issue, but he's against fascism, racism, and other things that come out of nationalism.
Good. That's a good start.
I do think that like immersing yourself in, you know, your traditions, the traditions and cultures and art of your ancestors is not a bad thing. It's just that it is tied into nationalism. And when you tie it into part of your group mentality towards others, that's when things become bad. When it's just like, hey, I live in this place where like I want to kind of find out the kind of things that my ancestors did. Like, yeah, sure, go for it. Everyone likes that.
Yeah,
everyone's got a genealogy page. But like when that extends to like we need to preserve Western civilization against barbaric hordes, that's like no, that's bad.
It's like, feel free to have a Christmas tree, but when you get to the point that you're like, oh, we can't have a menorah in the town square because that will erode our Christian culture, that's when you've crossed over the line into dangerous nationalism.
Yeah, I think
that's a religious example, but you get the idea.
Acknowledging the like traditions and cultures of your past is a good thing. Trying to hang on to it and preserve it against all odds, and not realizing that these are things that change over time, and that's a good thing because culture is not meant to stagnate, then I think you're in an okay place. Otherwise, you're just studying history.
Which is a complete waste of time.
Yep. I agree. And so do many, many of my potential employers. Could you give your opinion on the idea that Venezuela is currently a socialist country? Oh, this one's come up a lot lately.
It's run by a socialist party. I don't think anyone can deny that. A party that definitely identifies as socialist, but the majority of their economy is private. So no, it isn't.
Yeah, and also it in some ways it shows a little bit of an ignorance of South American politics, where there's a lot of like, I don't know if it was socialism that was the craze of Venezuela or if it was just Hugo Chavez. And there's a lot of like South American politics has a lot of cult of personality type movements, which will cause problems when that personality then dies of cancer. And so, yeah, Maduro might not have been a socialist. He might just have been a big fan of Hugo Chavez. And there's probably a lot of people in his party and people who support him who aren't exactly like readers of Das Kapital. They just like that Hugo Chavez, you know, took the powerful down and gave to make things better for everybody.
And And if you're asking me, like, is that how you want socialism to look? No, like,
No,
not quite, but yeah.
I like food, and I'm sure a lot of people in Venezuela like food.
Hmm. Madrudo certainly does.
Oh God, that whole thing.
That was like an Onion skit when he took out the sandwich and started eating it in the middle of.
It's true. Oh my goodness, it's so sad. Um, and it's tragic because like this is a pretty it's an actual humanitarian crisis, and uh, I hate when a humanitarian crisis is abused to just be an attack on a group of people, like say when a war in Syria is used as a way to demonize Muslims and deny refugees from your country or something like that.
Yeah, off the top of your head.
Off the top of my head, I know I have this comes up a lot. I'm a very big stickler about Islamophobia. It's a thing that
As well you should be.
yeah.
I think it's a very pressing issue at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I even wrote a thing. It's very prescient. I wrote in my my master's thesis in 2014, in like the summer of 2014, that like Islamophobia didn't end after the surge of 9/11. 9/11 created more fear than hate, but it has been the hate has been growing ever since, starting around the time of the Ground Zero mosques specifically, and that it's turned from anxiety to hatred, and that it's getting worse, not better. And I handed it in 2014, and literally like a week later, ISIS was all over the news, and it's just like, oh shit.
Yeah, I I even like I don't even know how like a situation like the naked prejudice that is on display now. I don't even know how that is contained at this point. Like I don't know how we reverse track.
Yeah, especially because now there's like an Al Jazeera piece that came out that showed that like there's now like an industry that feeds off of it. And somebody from the SPLC pointed out, and this is a video I want to make too, where like this is the exact same shit that happened that caused the Rwandan genocide, was that people started making profit off of stirring up hatred for a minority group.
Yeah.
Man, remember how I said we were the calm before when things get nasty?
Oh man, like I don't know. I'm really nervous about the future, and specifically with regards to racial animus. I really feel like we're like one bad day away from full ethnic cleansing.
Peaceful ethnic cleansing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see the thing that happened with him?
The thing where he admitted out loud that he doesn't care about free speech.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's what everybody's been saying. And like this is what like you warn everybody about this. You go like, hey, this is what they're doing, and they look at you like, no, you're crazy. They said they weren't doing that. Like, yeah, why would they say they're doing that?
Yeah, they told me they weren't Nazis.
Yeah. Why would someone lie about being a Nazi?
Gamergate was about ethics and games journalism.
Mm-hmm.
I've been hesitant to talk about Gamergate lately in the last couple of days because the whole thing. I'm not a ghoulish person, but yeah,
I'm a ghoulish person, but I like you can there is a way to criticize the harmful actions of someone without necessarily mocking them specifically for dying of cancer.
Yeah, I mean, like this kind of same shit happened when Barbara Bush died too. I was like, you know, there's a lot to say that's bad about Barbara Bush. Can we like wait like 2 days?
I don't even know if it's a matter of waiting as so much as like there is, if someone is bad enough that you have grounds to criticize them, that's what you should criticize them for rather than like dying.
Yeah,
you know?
that true.
Like by all means, like if you feel like people are lionizing someone who is harmful, you can point out like, yeah, they did a lot of harmful stuff. Here's why you shouldn't.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, am I getting into a conversation that you'd rather not have on the stream?
No, I get it. I think like this is when like the worst tweet in history happened because of Barbara Bush's death.
What's that?
It was, oh gosh, it was. This is gonna get into real Twitter logic here, but it was some like organization like it was some like liberal feminist organization.
Oh yeah,
that said "Rest in Power, Barbara Bush," and it was the most ratioed tweet in history, I would say. It was just, oh no.
I don't know if you ever saw Hillary Clinton's children's book.
Hillary Clinton's, oh yes, yeah, where she like completely glossed over like union busting and like.
Well, she also presented herself as the inventor of feminism.
Oh goodness.
There's like a splash panel where it's like all of these people doing cool jobs, and they're all real historical characters. And there's like a black baseball player, and like it's like all of the cool jobs, all of the important jobs were held by men. And then along came Hillary.
Oh geez. Yeah, I mean, oh man.
Or like the good bedtime stories for rebel girls where they call Margaret Thatcher a rebel girl.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No. Don't do this. This is liberals. Liberals, this is why we don't like you. It's when you do these things. All right, this is a good question from Ron. Do you have any idea how much cocaine congressmen use on average?
How much cocaine is there?
I imagine a lot.
I would say about a third of that.
A third of the cocaine.
A third of all cocaine is in the United States Congress.
Makes sense. It's still the 80s there, guys. What mic do you use to record? I'm on a Blue Yeti. This is like the cornerstone of the internet content creator collective. This is a $110 USB microphone and has been the first tool for countless amounts of content creators.
I'm sorry, Tristan. It's not a $100 USB microphone. It's a $100 toy.
Oh yeah. Well, the fact that it's a toy, results in it being affordable enough that somebody who is as poor as I am can buy one, but good enough that you can make a passable YouTube video.
Yes.
And so it has launched the careers of a lot of people who otherwise would not have had their voices shown in the world because the rich people didn't want to give them one. And so like so many like ContraPoint started on this.
ContraPoint started on her cell phone.
Really?
Yeah, she used to film her videos on her cell phone.
Oh geez, I used to as well. I did too, but they did not go well. The first Step Back video was made with Google Slides.
That is such. You really made it difficult on yourself.
Yeah, it was like discount PowerPoint.
I should mention I also use a Blue Yeti, but I'm not using one right now because it's away attached to an old scratching post for when I film.
What happens if your cat decides that their claws need sharpening while you're doing a video?
I shoo them away, as I do literally every single time I have to record something. It's the scratching post that they never ever use. It's always in the corner of the apartment, and they never go near it until they bring it out to record a video, and suddenly they're like, you know what? They're looking a little long. Maybe I'll get some scratching done today.
Yeah, we have an issue because our cat thinks that the liquor cabinet is one that is in needing of claw stuff.
Maybe your cat's just an alcoholic.
Maybe, but also it's made of reclaimed wood, so I can't tell if the cat's ruining it or making it better. So what? So that's the mic I used to record. That's a mic you used to record. It is. I feel like you could almost write a book about the Blue Yeti because there have been so many careers made on such a simple thing. And
I will say, if you're asking that question because you're looking for a good cheap mic, you can get a lavalier clip-on mic that just plugs into your cell phone for like $20 online. So that might be worth investing in if you can't afford a Blue Yeti.
Mm-hmm. But it's good. It's a sign that there's some goodness that came out of the internet. Not much.
Not much. Basically, the Blue Yeti and Hamster Dance
Yep.
and Homestar Runner are the only good things to ever come out of the internet.
Sure. Have you still taught a, okay. Are you still taught a nationalist view of history in high school? In Sweden, history teachers never do that. On the other hand, we don't have any good romantic national founding myths. Yeah, I think Sweden does things differently. I think in Sweden you have to have a master's degree to be a teacher, so maybe that might be why. Yeah.
That makes sense.
But Sweden's got Sweden's got its own serious racism problems, but they've got in some ways, they've got some stuff figured out that we really need to get on. And yeah, Sweden also doesn't have as much of a founding national myth. But that doesn't stop people from trying. Like, they tried it in Canada so many times to give us a founding myth, and you still can't. Still, most people don't know who the first prime minister is. So, like, they haven't done a very good job. But
it's interesting to me that, like, whenever Americans make an appeal to what the founding fathers would have wanted, I always think of someone trying to do that in Canada. Like, this is what Sir John A. Macdonald have wanted. I'm like, yeah, who gives a fuck?
What John A. Macdonald would have wanted is whiskey.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, we got a super chat from Matt Mann. That's a new one. What is your opinion of how the Far East, specifically China, Japan, Korea, both North and South, Vietnam, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, are advancing their technology? I don't know. They're doing it.
It feels like they're all doing it differently, too, at different paces.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's like there was this period in the 80s where everybody was obsessed with, like, the tiger economies. That these countries were, like, ahead of their time. I mean,
the idea that and it's still lingering today, the idea that Japan is going to be this powerhouse economy in the future. And it just never materialized. And Japan's population is aging. So it's probably,
turned out to be a bit of a phase, especially because they are fiercely nationalistic, and so they don't allow immigrants into their country for the most part, and that has resulted in them having a huge demographic crisis. So,
yet another point
nationalism
in favor of nationalism sucks.
Yeah. South Korea is now known as, like, the place where, like, you could basically the place where all of the good cell phone technology is developed now. But that in South Korea, like, Samsung makes cars.
Really?
Yeah, it's so strange. They're, like, way more of a big technology company there that cover, like, every branch of life. I don't know. I've never driven in a Samsung car or seen one, but I just know that that's a thing.
Have you ever been to Asia?
I haven't. I have only been to I've been to 6 countries in my life. And 3 of them are in NAFTA. So I have not globetrotted quite as much as I would have liked.
Yeah. Well, in this economy?
Yeah. I mean, I have been to Mexico and did not just go to, like, Cancun. I mean, I've done that too, but I went to Mexico City for 10 days, which I think made my experience quite a bit different.
Was it smoggy?
It is a extremely busy city. I don't remember it being smoggy per se, but like, how the TTC is at, like, 9 a.m.? It's like that basically all day long.
Oh, that sounds like hell on earth.
I mean, to take the subway, yes. And the city is so massive that you basically have to. But I went there because I got to see, like, the Templo Mayor. I got to see Teotihuacan, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site where it's like a giant pyramid, whole bunch of pyramids and temple sites. So I went through a phase where I was really into Aztec stuff, and that's where I went and saw it all. All right.
I've never been to Mexico.
It's a fun place. It is a beautiful country with a lot of really great culture, with a really beautiful culture, and a lot of really. They know there's a lot of fun to be had there. A lot of great music, a lot of great art. I mean, the killing of bulls thing is not my favorite, but besides that, All right. What is an element to history that shocked you by how contra it was to the common narrative? For example, the American Revolution not necessarily being a case of good guys fighting for democracy against an evil empire. Ooh.
Well, I think my answer is pretty obvious, but the extent of the genocide of Native people in North America and the degree to which they had an advanced civilization before Europeans arrived was probably the one for me.
Yeah, the one that I would say, and this is one that's still a little bit in development, so it hasn't really been uncovered totally yet. The one that blew my mind is in Brazil. There's growing evidence that a majority of what we call the Amazon rainforest was cultivated and was grown, is like a grown over civilization, and that a lot of the trees and stuff like that were planted in intentionally, and that there is some evidence that like an entire civilization existed deep in the Amazon, and we can't dig too much into it because it's the Amazon, but there's evidence that some very large civilization deep in the rainforest existed, and that a lot of the plants that thrive in the rainforest were chosen in a sense by humans.
By very strong women, as I understand.
Probably. But I think that's really cool, and I think that South America doesn't get a lot of attention when it comes to their indigenous people, except for like the like Inca people. But I think it's really cool, and that's one that comes to me. And one that like isn't just like, man, the world turned out to be way more depressing than I thought it was. That was one where I thought the world ended up being way more interesting than it turned out to be. All right, this is a question for you. When I search for your channel, I find a lot of Thought Slime debunked videos, and I mean a lot. What would you say to those who debunk you and their viewers?
I wouldn't say anything to them, because to do so would require me watching their content and engaging with it even slightly, and I am not interested in doing that. The very first video I ever got that debunked me, I clicked on it and I said to myself, never again. Because the very first image that popped up was me wearing a helmet and drooling, and it said, and apologies, because this is an offensive thing, it said, riding the short bus with Thought Slime. And I thought, well, if this is the standard of argument this person's going to make, I don't need to hear it. So I don't engage with those, and that's not out of fear that they're going to like demolish my worldview, but rather knowing myself well enough that I have to have the last word. And so if someone is saying shit about me and I don't feel like I get a chance to respond, it's going to eat at me. But if I do respond, then I'm sucked into their orbit forever. And I don't want that. I will say that I did recently watch a video that Marxist YouTuber Zexy made in response to me. And I did watch that one the whole way through. Yeah, but it's because the type of people who make those videos are not the type of people whose views or opinions I take particularly seriously.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is like you're not going to go to a debunking video for like in-depth analysis of like people. Like you have to realize that the purpose of those videos is not to like have a discussion. The purpose of those videos is just to attack you, to rile up their audience and get them more views. And like that's
to own me.
Yeah, like there's like nobody's arguing in good faith. I'm sad because the only response videos I've gotten was one by a person who was whose thesis boiled down to "No, you're wrong. All Muslims actually are evil," and the other one was two 14-year-olds watching my video and pausing to make to laugh and to make like random like jokes or random kind of like really basic conservative talking points. And they were both like obviously very young. And the video has 6 views and 4 of them are mine because I find it endlessly fascinating. But
I watched like a clip from one, and for those of you who aren't familiar with my channel, I have a little cartoon guy, and he's got a pink shirt on that says King Cuck. which I just, did on a lark one day, and it kind of stuck. And the clip I watched was some dude getting like very, very angry that I was like promoting degeneracy and like going into this really pornographic rant about cuckoldry and how disgusting it is. And it's like, yeah, but it's a joke. Like, you say that the left can't take a joke. I just made fun of myself and it offended you so badly you had to like rant about it in a video. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's man, it's so crazy. I am, like I said, it blows me away how much you are like punching above your weight in the pissing off horrible people department.
I take that as the highest praise.
Mm-hmm. What is your knowledge and perspective on fascist Italy?
I don't like it.
Yeah, it was bad. Italy was in chaos because they were in. You know what? It was like Benito Mussolini coming to power was very much like the coming to power of another chaotic strongman named the Joker in a movie called The Dark Knight, where a bunch of people who are powerful but felt threatened by justice decided to put their efforts into a person who seemed to have all the answers, but they didn't necessarily believe in his methods, but they trusted somebody they didn't understand, and then thought they could manage him. And when he came to power, they realized they couldn't. And so a bunch of like industrialists and royalists and conservatives supported a fascist to come to power, and then the fascists then turned around and wiped them all out. So watch The Dark Knight, and Benito Mussolini is the Joker, and communism is Batman.
Thank you for saying that, by the way. I recently said in a video that that anarchists don't necessarily oppose Batman. And I got a lot of comments about that, about how of course they do, because Batman is a fascist.
No.
But one thing I will add on top of Benito Mussolini, the one thing that he was supposedly good for was getting the trains to run on time. But that's not true. If you actually look back at the statistics, the trains actually ran worse under fascism than they did previously. So there's no upside to fascism. It won't even help the trains.
No. Might help the windows, which I know I've learned through talks about protests. People care a lot about the integrity of.
Yeah, no, it won't even help that. Kristallnacht, dude. Nazis hate windows. Yeah,
that's true. This question, I think I lost the context of. How about the Vietnam War and the Viet Cong? I think it was when we were talking about revolutions. That's how far behind we are. About successful revolutions. Viet Cong was a situation where I don't know enough to talk about post-war Vietnam to say anything correctly, so I'm not going to get on that. But sometimes you get lucky. But revolutions are inherently, I think revolutions just have a lot of chaos and a lot of different interests involved that can cause problems when they're
I would be interested to get the perspective of American Johnson. He has a channel. What's the name of it? I forget the name of his channel. I'm sure if you Google American Johnson, it'll show up. But he's a leftist who lives in Vietnam. He's an American, but he lives in Vietnam. I would be interested to hear his perspective on the subject.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think that I'm not well enough informed on Vietnamese history to talk about that. Although I want to, because I want to make a Vietnam video from the Vietnamese perspective, because there's a lot of it's a really cool story from what I do know. Could you do a video on Coudenhove Callegri? He's one of the center of an alt-right conspiracy theory, but he's quite an interesting person by himself. I'll write this name down for later. That's a video request. That's not a question. How about the Chia Chow, Shang Tang, and other Chinese dynastic periods? Yeah, they're things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the solution, it is the problem. Then he starts the drug and immigration wars and starts the invasion of Grenada. Wow, conservatives, good job. How ironic is that? Does Northern Ireland belong to Ireland if they want to? And as far as I know, they don't.
Yeah, it's yeah. Nowhere belongs to anywhere.
It's true. All right. In the future, will the definition of white person be expanded to include half white people so that we don't have to exclude black people like Obama and Prince Harry's new wife? I did talk a little bit about this, and this is how this is the kind of infuriating stuff I always do, because I did this another thing where I talked about the charmed circle.
The charmed circle.
It comes from queer theory, which is like the most postmodern of all of the postmodern theories, where queer theory is the whole like trying to break down heteronormativity and things like that in culture, and showing how a lot of culture has a lot of heteronormativity built into it in a lot of strange ways. And it's interesting. It is the densest theory you will ever read ever. It is the hardest stuff I've ever had to read in my entirety of grad school.
And you, and in this, so how did that inform your view of the question?
Oh, so the charmed circle is this idea of there's this group of sorry, I'm just getting a text from someone who's trying to park in my building. So there's this circle that is like everything that is accepted in society as far as sexual behavior goes, and that sometimes it grows, and so you can call something acceptable. And in my mind, white is the identity of like you're in the charmed circle. And so it has expanded over the years. Like there's a time where being Irish or Italian was not part of that. There was a time where being Hispanic was part of that, and then it got chucked out. So like there's a whole bunch of things like that, and I feel like that's and
even then, certain Hispanic people are still considered white. I would say it's really Latin people that are denied the white label. Like if you're from Spain, most people would say that's white.
Nice. Yeah. It's a whole thing. And like, you know, there's an example that like a certain, I don't know, it's different types of ethnic groups have been able to join. And yeah, I'm not sure where it would go from there. I'm hoping that it would be breaking down that category altogether, but that's me being optimistic.
Yeah. Well, my only fear there is it's replaced with some even more hideous category.
Another arbitrary thing that we can build a bunch of social things around.
Yeah, that would exclude a different group of people rather than the people that are excluded now. But you're right that the term white is so arbitrary and fluid that I doubt it would be the type of thing that like 500 years from now people will even recognize.
Yeah, I do think like in the this is like where like I think that a lot of ground could be done in like science fiction and stuff, because like we don't like, if we were 100 or maybe not 100, if we were like 1,000 years ago, our concept of what race is would be non-existent. It would be like very nebulous and ill-formed, and so like that there's like all these roles in society based on what skin color you have. I'm just like, in the future, what other random arbitrary things are we going to force people to have categories over? It's kind of why The Handmaid's Tale is such a good story, because it kind of does that.
Yeah, I mean, and conversely, what other arbitrary things like that existed in the past? That yeah, you look at like caste systems and things like that, which I guess still exist, but yeah,
they used to be a lot more formalized. There used to be a time where in like European society that, you know, whether or not you had a last name, or where you came from, or your status within society resulted in what kind of clothes you wore, resulted in how you addressed people, how people addressed you, what kind of jobs you could have, all those things. There's a whole very complicated system of like addressing your superiors and your inferiors, and what clothes you're allowed to wear. And actually the mass production of clothing that happened in the 19th century was one of the things that like made people freak out, because it's like, oh, now like a shoe cobbler can buy a shirt that looks like it was made for a nobleman, and like that can't happen.
And there were laws passed too, in direct response to that, to like limit, I think famously, it was illegal for a period of time for people, for the lower people to have coattails.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's where those kinds of things come from, and that's what I talked about. That's what race is in a social context. That's what gender is as a social thing. Like that's what social construction means, folks. I know that it's a really hard thing to get across for some reason that I don't understand, but that is what a social construction is.
Well, I think when people hear social construction, what they think is you're imagining it, you know. But like money is a social construct, and that's definitely real, and definitely has like a material effect on your life.
Yeah.
But it's like a $20 bill is a piece of paper. It's not in and of itself worth $20 worth of value.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, like race is real in the sense that it is a thing that affects people in their life, but it's not real in the sense that like you can determine someone's IQ by measuring their skull with calipers.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that's what my latest video was supposed to be about, but I think you just summarized it way better, and that I couldn't in like 17 minutes or however long it is. Oh god.
But I bet the comments are fun.
Oh, the comments are so fun. I've gotten nasty comments before. I get about average one every 10 seconds. No, I probably get about 30 or 40 nasty comments a day. I have never gotten so many like long cited single paragraph walls of text that are just long, insane, racist rants.
Some dude once did that to me. He listed this like huge like series of documents that it was just a complete gish gallop. There's no way you could like respond to it. And I said to him, that's a lot of words you wrote when you could have just wrote 14 of them.
Yeah, and so like that happens so much, or that has happened a lot in the last couple days. But yeah, this video, I feel like setting off those people means I did the right thing.
Yes, yeah.
I'm weirdly proud of that video. All right, somebody asked, Jenga Tree 121 wants to know what video games we've been playing.
I think we have the same answer.
The Zelda
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild. The last few days I've been playing Stellaris a bit more because the new expansion came out, and that game will destroy my life whenever it adds new content. So, yay!
I haven't even dipped my toe. There was a new update to The Binding of Isaac, which is my favorite video game of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't even, because I just bought a Nintendo Switch, I haven't even like turned on Isaac in like a month, and that's probably the longest I've ever gone since buying it without playing it.
Yeah.
And I bought it like 3 years ago. So.
Oh, you want to be super blown up there. You want to go into like super social construct territory for the people out there who are like, oh, is like subspecies a social construct? It is, because species is not an objective thing. Pluto was our proof that a planet is a social construct, because the reason why Pluto got declassified is because we did not have a definition of a planet. Yeah. All right. Matt Mann wants to know, what do you think of what is going on now between Europeans, mestizos, and Amerindians, or Native Americans, in Bolivia? Oh, gosh, like, you assume too much of us, Matt Mann.
Yeah, the video game question was a nice, easy one. And then people are like, oh, talk intelligently about geopolitics. I don't know. There's some doofus on the internet wearing a ghoulie shirt.
I mean, like, if I did a video about Bolivia, I might know a little bit, but I think that there's like this concept that I wake up every morning and I'm like, yes, all of the newspapers this morning. I'm just going to sit and absorb everything that is happening in the world right now so that I can have an opinion of it on the internet later.
And I think that attitude is the reason that frauds like Lobster Dad can just rant about shit they don't know anything about. Yeah. This idea that if you're an intelligent person, you just know things without having to like research. But in fact, what makes a good historian or a good social scientist of any stripe is not knowing everything already, but rather knowing how to retrieve that information when necessary. how to go about researching it and synthesizing it into a coherent argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't trust anybody who has a take on literally everything. Or reactionary Kermit. There's someone who made like a comment on one of my video on the the scientific racism video. It's like, why did you have to dunk on Jordan Peterson? And I was like, I'm like 67% sure that I didn't even mention him in the video. I know that sometimes I just randomly do because that's just what I do sometimes. But
it's a nervous tick.
A nervous tick. I mean, he's so close to me. It's just like U of T campus is like a block from my house, or a couple blocks from my place. So
I haven't watched the video yet, but did you dunk on Charles Murray at all?
Yes, and Amy Chua and Sam Harris and Steven Pinker and Carl Benjamin and.
It's a cool guy group.
Yeah, those are all very much dudes. They all think very much like dudes. All right. Next up. So, with regards to preserving language, the case for or against Afrikaans isn't as clear cut as one would think. It's actually been used both as a tool of oppression, but at the same time, it's. Oh no, I didn't get part 2 of that. Yeah, Afrikaans is an interesting thing, and I don't see any issues with at least like preserving a language like Afrikaans. Like I know that it was an oppressive language because it's like this African dialect of Dutch that the racist like South African regime used, but it's still like a cultural product of a people. And I don't believe in just forgetting anything. I'm a historian. We just want to collect everything forever. But
yeah, and I don't think that just because the people were oppressed, that means that they have to shed everything of the culture that oppressed them in order to be free.
Yeah.
As long as you acknowledge like the damage done.
Yeah. At the same time, it's the mother tongue of a large group of oppressed non-white people. That was the other end. He ran out of times. He ran out of space to type. So language, especially when it comes to language, because there's a lot of languages that are going extinct. And when it comes to the legacy of colonization, like there are several countries in West Africa. There's a reason why that it is predicted that by the end of the 21st century, that the most spoken language on earth will be French. And it's because of a population explosion that's set to happen in West Africa as that part of the world joins the international capitalist market. Like there's a set that like Nigeria is set to have a huge population boom in the next couple decades, and a lot of other countries like Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone and a bunch of countries that speak French. But like, yeah, French is their native tongue. I mean, it's a very unique type of French. I just I don't see why. I don't know. It's
why is French so much more prone to hyper-specific dialects than English?
I think it's because French as a language has this weird quirk to it where there's a very wide gap between how it's spoken and how it's spelled. So like for some reason, if you don't get a very, very, very proper French education, very fancy French education, you're not going to be able to learn all of French because it has possibly one of the most complicated grammars on earth. It's one of those like 80-20 languages that's like you can learn most of what you need to get by very quickly, but to learn all the 19 verb tenses and all these things gets really complicated really fast. So like French and also there's a lot of times where even people who are native speakers can speak it completely fluently and have issues with spelling and typing. And so a lot of times French becomes a non-literate language because it's really hard to teach people how to write and read in it. And so a lot of places where colonization happened, there's a lot of people learning French because it's very easy to learn to speak. It's very hard to learn how to write. And so a lot of times they learn how to speak it, but then they don't have the Bechamels and dictionaries to refer to. And so it becomes very hyper-localized very quickly to the point where they're sometimes mutually unintelligible. Like I have trouble understanding Akkadian people.
That was the example I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in New Brunswick and I was talking to this guy and his like French was just incomprehensible. And I was just, oh, geez, okay. And I think that English does it too. People don't talk about it as much. Like there's like, if you listen to a lot of like, especially in places like West Africa, like how they have reinterpreted the English language in some ways.
Like I'm from Newfoundland and we're often called like this.
Hey, bye. How you getting on?
How you getting on? What are you at, Bob?
Yeah. Or like even Scottish. Or Scottish people have a very particular take on their language that can be very complicated. And the other thing too is that French has like the Académie Française, which is that they have like a living, active organization that polices the French language and says what is in and what is out. And so a lot of people just say, nuts to that.
Yeah, as well they should.
Mm-hmm. All right. In a perfect world, I would like a secular state of Israel that represents both Palestine. It said Palatine, like as in like the German group, but I think he means Palestinian people. I think so too, yeah. And Israeli people. I just wanted to be annoying. But that would never happen. That would never happen. What do you two think, Tristan and Thought Slime? Of Israel.
Okay. Well, for one, if it's a secular state, it's not going to be called Israel. I am not.
I mean, I think we're both fans of the no state solution.
Yeah, like if you're asking me in a perfect world, like there would be no state. It would be an anarcho-communist commune, and there'd be no nuclear weapons on Earth, and everyone would get along. But yeah, I don't think it's as simple an issue as people like to make it out to be. Not in the sense that like I think it's a very morally simple issue, but in terms of finding a solution that both sides will accept. I don't think it's something you can just do in a sentence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like to me, it's the solution is not like, oh, look, I have this like set out 5-point plan. It's more like what would need to happen is a process of the two groups being able to just sit down and talk things through and not have interests in both countries that are, especially Israel, but also especially Palestine, that have interest in making sure like that these talks break down and that they don't get any further. Like the Oslo peace process, I think, was like the closest that we're going to see in our lifetimes to something that could have been a real lasting peace. But it got botched because in Israel, presenting yourself as a like hardliner against people is against Palestinian people is a way to get elected. And so like that's just what drives people to that thing. So like honestly, you want a solution, you have to have both of those groups, especially Israel, have a work themselves into an ability where they can both say, yeah, there's still going to be violence, but there's going to be violence for a while. And we have to like not let that break down talks. And we have to realize that peace is more important than like just capitalizing on the latest tragedy. And we're going to have to actually like work something out over a long period of time. And I think part of that means giving up on the, Jewish state, like Jewish ethno-state concept. But
yeah. And I think even like, people always frame it as, don't you think that the Jewish people deserve their own state? It's like, I don't think that's how states work. I don't think states are formed based on like who deserves what, States exist as long as the moral basis of a state is in the idea that it protects its citizens. And if a state fails to do that, then it is not justified. And I can think of no clearer example of a state failing to protect its citizens than literal apartheid. where you're segmenting your population and forcing one side to like live in squalor and gradually squeezing them out of their own home. Like that's a pretty clear failure in my view. So yeah, states don't deserve to exist by default.
Yeah. Want to say shout out to Fedor for keeping the peace in the chat.
Why was that? Was that a controversial?
No. There's a person who has opinions about biological race in the chats, and it's getting a little funky. All right, we are quickly running out of time. We still have so many questions, but this is fun.
We can do like a lightning round.
Yeah, we can. Well, I mean, we can always do another one of these sometimes because I know that I can force you to do things. Because
That's not how it sounds.
We're buds, so I can bug you. Tristan's cat is made of reclaimed wood. No, my liquor cabinet was made of reclaimed wood. Should Canada abolish the monarchy? Why or why not? And why not have an elected president? I am for getting rid of the monarchy. I'm not exactly for having a president, but I know that those two are kind of mutually exclusive things. But
yeah, no, definitely get rid of the monarchy. Although I don't think Canada has the power to unilaterally abolish it. We can definitely stop acknowledging it on an official basis.
Mm-hmm. I think that not having a president has actually helped Canada quite a bit, but we don't need to have a president. Or if we do, we could have like one of those presidents who are kind of just a figurehead that does foreign policy stuff, like trying to think, there's some European countries where their president isn't as powerful as their prime minister, for example. All right. All right. Little known fact. Did you know that Indigenous people are, as they call them, the First Nations in Canada? Oh, no. Okay. This is the guy who the whole thing happened. I'm just going to get rid of these questions. What are your opinions? Ooh, this is a juicy one. I think we've talked about this too in IRL. What are your opinions on Telesur and Russia Today?
Well, I mean, they're very clearly state propaganda of the Russians. I think they very, very clearly have an agenda that they're trying to destabilize American democracy. But they're certainly not the media company who I think is doing that the quickest, which is I would give that to Fox News.
Mm-hmm. So thinking like, because Russia Today portrays itself as like super left wing, but if you like watch the media, it's always more just anti-American than left wing, and it's interesting because Telesur does this too in some ways, where like both of them they're doing. It's like not factually incorrect work about like, America has done this in the world and this in the world. And it's like, this is not inaccurate statements, but you can tell, at least in Russia Today's sense, that they're not doing it because they're trying to like push the world in a certain direction. They're doing it as like a movement to destabilize the United States on behalf of Russia. I'd be curious because, like, actually, they have a mock daily show type thing called Redacted Tonight that I would love to have you watch and say things about.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun idea.
Because I remember during the election, it was a quote unquote like real left wing daily show that seemed to only criticize Hillary Clinton and nothing else.
Well,
and it was just like,
there's definitely people in the real left wing that are like that for real. I think of someone like Slavoj Žižek.
Oh yeah, Slavoj. He's a total brocialist.
Yeah, but he said that Hillary Clinton winning the election was the worst case scenario because it would allow for Americans to be complacent, whereas Donald Trump would shake people out of their torpor. But like, that's just accelerationism. Like, you're just talking about accelerationism, and it's a shitty idea.
Yeah, it's a thing that only a white person who doesn't live in the United States could possibly advocate for.
Yeah.
It's so goof. Um,
Which is
I,
not to say that I'm like a big Hillary Clinton fan. I'm not, but she's definitely the lesser of two evils.
at least in that situation, it was so obvious. It'd be interesting to see what happened. I'd be curious for you to see Redacted tonight and see what you think of it, because it's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We're like, yeah, everything you're saying is correct, but like it's in the emphasis and the things you choose not to cover that shows that like this is it's very well done propaganda.
It's the type of thing I wish people had more media literacy to be able to decode, because you can make a compelling case for a lie using only truths.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
the other thing too that I would add to it is the left wing, the left wing conspiracy theorist type stuff is also like the kind of thing that goes into this Telesur type situation, or Telesur and Russia Today, like things like 9/11 truther stuff, and this kind of stuff starts to seep in to like be so anti-American that you like literally think that they were capable of pulling off the biggest black ops operation in human history and have literally no leakers.
Yeah, it's absurd. It's basically left-wing Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm. Or like even the transition of parties. You don't think that like if Obama found out that 9/11 was an inside job and that it would have like literally torpedoed the Republican Party for like all of history, you don't think that he would have brought that up if he found out? Or how deep does the deep state go?
And like just the logistics of it, like the people who argue like, oh well, jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Okay, so what you're saying then is that it was some sort of explosive device inside the World Trade Center. But why would they need to lie and say it was a plane? Why wouldn't they just say, oh, they blew it up with bombs? Why concoct this story about the planes? To what end? You know, it's so it flies in the face of all logic and common sense.
Yeah. I also have to apologize to Doughboy DeVito. He's like, as the Latino guy, I gotta get your pronunciation. Telesur. I thought like sur, like, okay. It's because I will say it's not because of my bad Spanish. Actually, it is partly, but it's also because sur is a French word and it's tripping me up. Sorry, I sidetracked on that. But yeah, 9/11 trutherism is ridiculous. And I do think that this is a thing that like Telesur and Russia Today kind of get into, with it's like there is left-wing cranks, and you can have good politics but bad judgment and bad critical thinking skills.
I'm living proof of that.
You have good critical thinking. You're all right. You're good. And jet fuel can melt steel beams, and it can melt them at least, and even if it can't melt them, it can at least get them to a point where they lose over 70% of their structural integrity.
Especially right after they just got hit by a fucking plane.
Yeah. As somebody who was a 9/11ologist for a while, as somebody who like was literally doing a dissertation on 9/11, I had to answer those questions a lot. So I know a lot about the 9/11 truth movement and 9/11 conspiracy theories and like all that stuff. It's like, oh man, I could have an entire thing on that itself. All right, we are so close to the end, but also I found out that my friend is still a few hours from getting here, so we can go a little bit over if that's okay. Question: should SpaceX be nationalized?
SpaceX pretty much already is nationalized. The overwhelming majority of SpaceX's funding comes from the public sector.
That was a joke I said in a stream once, that they should nationalize SpaceX because I think people shit on NASA too much.
Yeah, absolutely they do.
But yeah, he does make a lot of money. That's the thing. I think that this is the secret. This is my secret conspiracy theory about the Elon Musk empire. I should make sure my wife's not watching because she likes him. All right. I think Elon Musk is a person who might be a little bit of a con man, because he's really good at drumming up people's imaginations and getting lots of angel investment and government funds, but chronically underdelivers and doesn't seem to promise all of his sci-fi technologies that never seem to ever come to fruition.
Yeah.
Except he made that relaunchable rocket once, which is kind of cool. But like when he like his $35,000 car that he was like talking about forever is all of a sudden he's now saying, well, we're going to lose money if it's not $78,000. It's like, how many people gave you tons and tons and tons of money to like make a $35,000 electric car? And now you're like, well, and
I think he really benefits from this emerging cultural idea of what a smart person looks like, where it is just someone who by themselves can walk into any situation and fix it. You know, he's very much in the same vein as Jordan Peterson in that way. Is that like, because he's the head of a company that makes electric cars, people think that he personally can sit down and like design a new train system, and that's Elon Musk doing that with his own brain.
Although I will say it's okay, like I love dunking on Elon Musk. I don't do it very much, but I will say it's at least good to have a billionaire who is who at least like if you were to took his projects to their nth degree, that he wants to do something about climate change, which is really nice. Just that he seems to want to make money off climate change.
Does he want to do something about climate change, or does he just want to use that as like a tool of his marketing? You know, like, I don't think he actually gives a shit. I don't think Elon Musk is having like a positive impact on the world. And I think he's in fact doing a lot of stuff that's really bad. Like this resurgence of union busting talking points, you know, like I know that the American labor movement has been long dead, but just as we're starting to see like a kind of a resurgence of the labor movement with the teacher strike and things like that, you get Elon Musk using his public platform and legion of adoring sycophants to talk about like old like 1930s style anti-union propaganda.
Yeah, it's I think my wife said the other day, it's like, I just can't have heroes, can I? And it's like, no, not really, not anymore. This one's I feel like it might be like tanky trolling, but it might be fun. Is love a bourgeois construct?
No.
Love is great. Love is like an anarchist construct or something. I don't know. Anarchist. Yeah. Like love is just good. Love is just the fact that humans are creatures that like being with each other and like making bonds with each other, and that's our brain rewarding us for feeling good for being.
Yeah, we're pack animals.
Yeah, we're like the bonobo. We're not like lobsters. Who would make a terrible comparison to compare humans to lobsters?
I don't pinch people. I'm against it.
It's true. My crushing claw has not been as good as of late.
No, I have a scavenger that lives on the seafloor and eats carcasses. But other than that, I'm in no way like a lobster.
Yep. I'm not sure I get the whole love as a bourgeois construct. I don't know where that thing comes from.
That that weirdly to me seems
Pet
like
Shop Boys song, whatever that is.
To me, it almost echoes the idea, the Ayn Randian idea that altruism is impossible, and that love is merely a transaction between two people.
I think love shows. Love is like the best. The fact that love comes to people so easily is to me, even despite the fact of how much like the world's attempted to crush it, shows that like the whole idea of mutual aiding and stuff like that is baked into our DNA.
As David Graeber said that whenever there's a natural disaster, people kind of resort to communism because it's the only thing that works.
Yeah, that's pretty good. David Graeber, I had a Twitter interaction with him that went really funny because for some reason he had, I don't know why, but I went to go follow him and it turned out he had blocked me for some reason that I just didn't understand. I'm like, why did David Graeber block me? And so I made a post saying like, oh man, David Graeber blocking me, that makes me really sad. And he's just like, you must have a very easy life if this is the thing that makes you sad. And I was just like, oh, thanks. But he unblocked me. But that was the only thing he said. I think he's got a prickle to him.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I did not know that.
If you ever want to get under his skin, just call him the anarchist archaeologist. Not archaeologist, anthropologist.
Yeah.
He really hates that. Speaking
of cultural revivals, are there any Ukrainian and Gaelic speakers left in Canada? Also, why do so many Ukrainians immigrate there? So I think a lot of Ukrainians immigrated to Canada in the late 19th century because we were like literally advertising in Ukraine to like, hey, come over here. The Tsar won't annoy you here.
Also,
Canada is a literal slave here.
Canada is also like a pretty sweet country to live in for most people.
There was a time in the 19th century where we were settling the indigenous people's territories out in like places like Saskatchewan and Alberta and Manitoba and stuff, because we wanted to grab it before we thought the Americans would move in and do it. And in order to do that, we actually we sent people to Europe to like advertise for people to come to Canada for free land. And that's why there are a lot of Ukrainians in Canada, and a lot of them live in Saskatchewan. And that's why like Canada had an opinion about the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula, because Stephen Harper knew where his votes were.
And there was also Canada put up that thing for the Holodomor.
Yeah, the Holodomor. Yeah, that's a thing I should make a video about sometime too. People have that's like a thing that's like tankies are like straight up deniers of this thing. The Soviets starved people to death in order to or starved Ukrainians because they were getting uppity, and then did it under the guise of redistribution of land or something.
Which, like, you know, it's exhausting having to deal with people that will just, no, my side never did anything wrong.
All right. Should the left push to remove first past the post and use a point system like the Ontario Conservative leadership run? I mean, as a left-wing person, you should be sort of critical of hierarchical structures of any kind. And if you can replace it with something that is less hierarchical or better non-hierarchical, the better. So I think that there's a lot of people, especially on the radical left, who miss that middle part, where if you can make something less hierarchical, that also is good.
It is. I mean, like, the end goal for me is the end of representative democracy and moving towards direct democracy. But I don't know if that's like something you can jump straight from our current really fucked up system to, yeah. But I do think first past the post is kind of the worst of all worlds. It is very much the type of voting system that you would like vote on what pizza to eat, but not on who's going to run your country.
Yeah. All right. What's your opinion on democracy now? Good.
Good idea. We should have democracy now.
I think they're talking about the radio show and stuff.
I've never listened to it.
Oh, it's an American like left-wing radio / like TV show, and it's pretty good. It's run by public. It's been around for like 30 years. They interview Noam Chomsky like every other day.
Okay.
It's pretty decent. Amy Goodman runs it. She's like a journalist who's been arrested several times. I think the latest time was to defend with the water protectors in North Dakota.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's a good show. It's just yeah. I did not know that there's a thing to be against with it, but I don't think it fit. I think that the question came up around the whole thing about like Russia Today and Telesur, and I think that it doesn't fit in that. It's not doing the same thing for the same purpose.
Yeah.
What do you find harder, calculus or physics? I haven't done either, so I have no idea.
Yeah, by default, I guess I'd say physics, because calculus I managed to avoid my entire academic career.
Yeah, and I think calculus is in physics when you do electricity and stuff. How do I
You're
stop
asking
being?
two arts majors.
It's true. All right, this is a good question for you, Thought Slime. How do I stop being stupid?
Don't luxuriate in it. It's the best feeling in the world. Read, read as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Listen
Also,
and read.
you're probably not stupid. I don't really think people can be stupid. This is kind of a weird belief I have. I think people can be ignorant, but I
And
don't think that necessarily anyone lacks the capacity to learn.
yeah, you just have to be a person who enjoys learning. And if you
Hmm.
enjoy learning, then you're going to be what people call a smarty pants.
Hmm. And you're probably already smart about the things that interest you. You know, like I would be a complete idiot if someone asked me about hockey because I don't know anything about hockey. But the people who like hockey know a lot about it and they would be very smart on the subject. And it just so happens that the things that Tristan and I are interested in are things that, for whatever reason, have like a reputation as being smart people things, like history or political philosophy or the film Ghoulies.
Yep. You're on a Coolies kick these days.
I have always been on a Ghoulies kick.
Are you like really into like that 80s like garbage horror thing? Like B
Uh,
movie 80s
I don't know
stuff.
what you're talking about. Garbage movie. I'm talking about a latter day classic. No,
I
I
mean
love. I love. Yeah,
like even garbage pail kids and like things like that.
I really do love weird '80s movies with rubber puppets. Is something I love. I really the film Basket Case I think is the apotheosis of the genre. I
Excellent.
absolutely love Basket Case, and I could talk for hours about it.
All right. Will Cynthia Nixon win the presidency in 2028? They could
I
do
don't.
worse.
Do you think Trump will ever not be president?
I do think so. I actually like. I'm not afraid of Trump as an emperor or anything like that. I don't see Trump as the problem. I see the person who watched Trump get elected. Like Trump's an idiot. That's his thing. He's an idiot who stumbled onto the internet and realized that the way that politics works was like one heavy shove away from falling apart and decided to break it. He's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to probably step down or more likely get fired or die in office. And then it's the people who have been watching Trump's actions and taking notes that are the scary ones. It's going to be the person who knows how to push all of the buttons that Trump knows how to push, but also isn't a like wheezing gastropod that can't form a coherent sentence.
See, you have so much more faith in the system than I do, it seems, because I think it is, to me, a foregone conclusion that Donald Trump will be the president until at least 2024, if he doesn't die in office. That is the only circumstance I can imagine where he would not be the president in 2024, is if he dies in office. And while I'm not afraid he's going to like revoke the idea of term limits. I do think that however they hook his brain up into in a jar and speakers, we will be hearing his thoughts for the rest of our lives. There is no escape. It is Trump world. We are in hell and we deserve it.
And now we come up with the last question.
How may entropy be reversed?
Tristan, you said in passing the other day that you believe that Elizabeth Warren has the potential to be a great president. Can you elaborate on that? So, I feel like I'm losing all of my radical creds right now. But what I said in passing was that if Elizabeth Warren were made president, that she would probably be the greatest president in American history, because that's a very low bar to hit. Do I think that Elizabeth Warren would be the president that would like solve all of the world's problems? No, because she's still a person who believes in representative democracy and
liberalism,
and liberalism, all that kind of stuff. But out of the people who could be president, she is on the list of people who could be president that I would be least objectionable towards. And in election times, like when somebody is not president, like if Elizabeth Warren was running against Donald Trump the Fourth or Imperator of America, I think that I would be like, yeah, Elizabeth Warren, let's go for it until she's elected president. And then I'll be the persistent left-wing critique of Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, that is kind of my approach as well. It's that like you want to move the needle, and then you can criticize where things are at when you move it.
Yeah, like we're both in the middle of an election right now in Ontario, where friggin' the leftish wing party of Ontario has like come out, has like become the total dark horse candidate and like shot ahead when everybody was like passively thinking, oh, it's going to be another rich, out of touch white lady versus a literally Rob Ford's brother. And that Rob Ford's brother, who's acting very Trumpish, will become like a dictator of Ontario and everything will be awful. But then all of a sudden, socialism came into the picture. And turns out that when you describe socialism to people, they like it. And all of a sudden, as of like, I think a few days ago, the socialist candidate that nobody gave any hope to is now in first place.
Well, she's got the majority of the vote, but she's still projected to lose.
Yeah, she's going to have the majority of the votes and still lose because of districts. But still, she's coming out like she just needs a few more weeks of momentum, and who knows what could happen. But either way, I want Andrew Horwath.
And I encourage anyone in Ontario to also vote NDP, but I'm not going to have any hope in my heart.
Yeah. And even if Andrea Horwath gets a supermajority, like we all hope, then I will become the left-wing critique of Andrea Horwath.
Yeah.
And I can consider Andrea Horwath winning being a victory and also be a left-wing critic of Andrea Horwath.
Like the lesser of three evils is still evil.
Yeah.
You know?
And also, in some ways, there's some people, like, there's a difference between, like, I think that she actually would not be, I would say she would be in the mild not evil camp.
Yeah.
Like I think that like there's a difference between like the lesser of two evils argument to like let a centrist become leader because they'll ruin things less fast. But like a mild socialist winning that will make things mildly better is actually like a less good than I would hope, but still.
Yeah, that's probably, yeah. I'm not saying Andrea Horwath is necessarily an evil person with evil designs in her heart.
But like I know that under Andrea Horwath, the chances of privatizing essential services is less high, and the increasing of our civil rights and liberties and having more. Right now, the issue that she's winning on is the fact that Ontario is critically bad at providing basic services that we're supposed to keep doing, and so we're turning more American, and we need to like push back on that. But either way,
and the other candidates both have plans for where beer can be sold.
Yeah. This election's being done is mostly on dentistry, whether or not weed is going to be able to be sold by private companies, and where beer can be bought in stores.
All I want is to get high and go to the dentist.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll be doing that. I
will be, personally.
All right, everybody. Oh, someone wants to know if you've seen the latest Steven Universe episode. I don't know what this is.
I haven't. I'm so far behind on Steven Universe.
All righty. Well, with that inspiring last question, then I think that we will wrap this up. So it is, because it's almost 20 minutes after the time I said we would be finished, and I don't want to keep you much longer than you want to. So anyways, next month, I'm probably going to have to mess around with the date of the next show because of VidCon. There's a significant amount of time next month where I'm not going to be in Canada, so I have to going into the belly of the beast. So I'll be away, but I hope that we'll find someone cool. I think that I am very thankful that you decided and you said yes to come onto this when I bugged you at a bar once.
It was my pleasure.
We didn't talk about that. That was really fun.
It was fun, yeah. That was a lot of fun.
We had that meetup, and a lot of cool folks came out, and we had a lot of chats.
I was surprised at the turnout.
Yeah, me too. We thought I was like almost thinking that there was just going to be like the three of us, and that was like it, and your partner and my partner. But like then, all of a sudden, we took up like half the bar. It was pretty great. It showed that it felt good.
Yeah, we're gonna win.
We're gonna win. All right, everybody, please have an amazing night. It's Saturday night, so it's time to go to the discotheque and party down.
A great thing you can do if you want to like leave the house tonight is go ahead and go to either one of Tristan's playlists or one of my playlists and just let them play on your computer while you're out. You know,
I'll be sure to turn off your ad blocker.
Turn off your ad blocker too. Yeah.
And then just go and have fun. And yeah, so anyways, yeah, have a good night and thank you so much, Thought Slime. Before we go, tell people where they can find your stuff.
You can find me on youtube.com/thoughtslime. If you search for Thought Slime, but don't add the word debunked or explained, you should find my stuff. I'm also on Twitter, Thought Slime. Yeah.
His channel is one that's going places very fast, so you guys should get on the hype train before it leaves the station.
Going straight in the toilet. You heard it here first, folks.
All right, everybody. Have an amazing evening. End communication.